Okay, my name is Scott Bourgeois, and I'm a former mechanical engineer, and now I'm a vegan sailor and a animal rights activist also. I've been vegan for since about 2016. So we spent a lot of time in Panama when we were traveling, and we spent about 2 years in this place called San Blas. They also call it Gunayala. It used to be Cunayala, but they changed the K to a G. It's a weird thing. The people that live there live in really primitive conditions. They live in these islands. It's probably about a couple 100-mile stretch of coastline. The whole coast is all undeveloped mountainous jungle with waterfalls, all kinds of crazy wildlife, rivers. And the people live in these little islands, on these little islands just off the shore, which are covered with these, what look like straw huts, but they're these little huts made out of palm thatch, with palm thatch roofs, and they sleep in hammocks in them. And anyways, we spent about 2 years there, and we got pretty close with these people in this place. And so one time we were on this island, and we got to hang out with the chief of the island. So we spent a lot of time with his family, and one time we were over at their house. Somebody said, oh, they told us to go look in this other hut, which was like the chef's hut, and they wanted us to go see something back there. And so we went back in the hut, and it was all dark in there because they don't have any electricity either. And on the countertop there was this big aluminum pot there. Somebody nodded to us like we should lift up the lid of the pot and look in there. And so we lifted up the lid of the pot, and there was a pig's head, a wild boar's head, was in the pot. We were shocked, and they kind of saw that, and they chuckled, and then we put the lid back, and we went about hanging out with them, and we just thought that was kind of crazy, like, you know, why do they have this pig's head? And someone had explained to us that the pig's head was like where the best meat was, and it was all covered with hair and stuff,
singed from the fire.
And we just thought that looks disgusting. We forgot all about it then until like later on, someone invited us over for dinner. And so the next day we were coming over for dinner, and we got all dressed up, came through the fence in the courtyard, and everyone was dressed up in the family and hanging out and waiting for us. In the center of them, then there was just this little tiny card table with 2 chairs. And so they beckoned us over to the table, and we sat down at the table, and everyone else just stood there watching us. And the chief's chef, brought us each out this plate that was just mounded up with pig head. And then to wash it down, they had a glass of cow's milk with cornflakes in it. That was just soggy cornflakes stirred in, and that's how they do it. And they call it chicha maíz, but it's basically like soggy cornflakes in milk. And so we were like, oh my gosh, you know, we have to eat this. And so it was a pile of meat, and we each sat there while the whole family just watched us, and we tried to choke this down. And
hair and all.
after a while, it got a little bit tiring because, yeah, pieces of it had hair on and stuff, and it was super chewy. And then somebody saw our discomfort, and they said, "It's okay, you know. In our culture, you know, it's acceptable to not eat everything on your plate."
Thankfully, because there were no cats around. There were no animals around when you need them.
it was a very interesting experience for us. You know, we thought about this before we left on the sailboat. Like, we're going to meet people who will ask us to eat weird things, and so here we were, and here was this pig's head, and so we just like went right along with it, and we were these guests, so we just felt like we had to do this. But you know, after thinking about this for a long time now, because I've thought about this. Like, what would we do in the future now if we're vegan and we go into some other culture? Would it be insulting for us to not participate in their culture? And you know, it took me a while to figure this out, but I know these people were very friendly and we knew them well and they were always kind to us. And I know that if we had just said to them, if we had been vegan at the time and we had problems with eating animals, or I shouldn't say problems, if we didn't agree with eating animals and we just said to them, we don't eat animals anymore, that would have been acceptable. And, you know, perhaps we would have had some sort of conversation. But these people wouldn't have hated us, and they wouldn't have, I know they wouldn't have scorned us.
They wouldn't have been insulted or anything.
They wouldn't have been insulted, and all that is a myth also. You know, this is just culture. This is just what some people are doing over here. I struggled with that for a while, thinking, well, how could we go on with this veganism thing and still fit in? But it's not really about fitting in, and I know it wouldn't be a problem again. Like if we showed up and someone invited us over for dinner, we would just tell them, look, we don't eat animal products anymore. I'm sure they would either still be our friends, or if they weren't our friends, they probably wouldn't be very interesting people to have as friends.
Or we do what we do now when we go to normal people's places. We bring our own food and share our good vegan food and do it that way.
A lot of people that would see the way all these people live in these thatched huts, they would say, wow, these people are very poor, and so they were offering you this animal, which was like a huge sacrifice for them. But in actuality, you know, these people, they don't think of themselves as poor. They farm all these amazing fruits and vegetables from the jungle, and a lot of them just grow on their own. They just stick a piece of a yucca plant in the ground in the jungle, and a few months later it pops up and it has huge yucca roots that they harvest. And then they just cut the stalk and shove it back in the ground, and more roots grow. And they grow corn, and there's mango trees everywhere.
Avocados everywhere.
Avocados.
Huge ones.
That cost us 15 cents when we were there a piece. You know, these people are you know, food rich, really. It's not an insult to say that you don't want to participate in this. This is like this is the basis of what we believe as vegans, that you know, this kind of civil disobedience is what we're expressing. You know, our goal is not to make people angry. Certainly, it's something we can work with too, and you know, it's nothing to be afraid of.
You know, I do a lot of traveling too, of course, doing this sort of stuff, and nothing infuriates me more, I feel like, you know, over the years, than being like in an Atlanta airport. There's, you know, at
no
night,
vegan options?
at night or something, you know, like, oh, it's so difficult traveling sometimes. And especially, you know, or if I'm driving to Maine, you know, and I get to some rural convenience store or whatever, or even a grocery store, or a cafe or a restaurant, and nobody knows what even the word vegan means.
Right.
And the whole time I'm thinking, man, we're making so much progress. And it's like, no, we're not. But we all have an opportunity to educate, and that's what I think you're learning. Don't be afraid of culture. Don't be afraid of just gently informing people. And
I think don't use culture as an excuse.
There you
go. I think that's another one. You know, people are like, oh, I can't be vegan because I travel. Well, like, no, you can be. You know?
Absolutely, yeah. Might be hard if you're raw vegan, but...
Yeah, I don't know about that. I tried that for all of like 2 days.
Depending on where you're going, I guess.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In the Caribbean, you could easily. I mean, there's so many fruits and veg that it's just really simple to do it there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I had a friend who was really into traveling, and he shared with me some of these YouTube channels where guys, you know, try to travel months or whatever at a time in a sailboat from one location to another. And a couple of them might have been pretty much vegan.
There's quite a few out there now.
It's happening. You know, there's this theme on a sailboat that you're self-sufficient because you left society and you said all these things about society are BS and you don't want to participate in this anymore. There's all this wastefulness and there's all this meaningless culture that doesn't work for you anymore. So you're going to say enough of it and you're going to sail off into the sunset and experience the world as it is. There's this word that the sailors use, and it's self-sufficiency, and that's like a really popular term with travelers on sailboats because if you're out in the middle of the ocean alone, or you're out in some desert island or some reef by yourself, you have to be able to take care of yourself, which means you have to be able to handle all the equipment that you have to sustain yourself. You have to keep your motor running and know how to work the sails, and just know how to function without anyone to support you. But there's a funny term in there that doesn't really fit this with this euphemism, or what becomes a euphemism, because how can someone be self-sufficient if they have to kill someone else in order to survive? We hear this like over and over from lots of sailors, that they're self-sufficient and they like to fish and feed themselves and know how to feed themselves. But almost all of them have a freezer on their boat that is stocked with frozen meat, or a lot of them anyways. They say then that, you know, they get sick of eating just seafood. They have to have some lamb or some cow or some pig. And so that was another thing that we had to think like really hard about. Like, well, if we're going to keep living on a sailboat, and this was our shtick, was like, we're self-sufficient. We can live on our own without people helping us, which itself is kind of an absurd idea, because we all need each other. We thought, well, how are we going to do this if we're out in the middle of the ocean, and yeah, is fish the only thing to eat? It didn't take us long to work this out, but it seemed like a struggle at first. When we would go somewhere that was out in the middle of nowhere, if it's like a reef 100 miles from shore, and so we're going to be out there for a month all by ourselves or with a few other people, and we need to take care of ourselves. Is fish the only thing we can eat? That's like an absurd idea. Like when we leave civilization, we pack our boat up with all kinds of food, everything that we think we're going to need to survive. And then we always said, yeah, we're going to eat a lot of fish too, and we did eat a lot of seafood, sea animals. But in reality, you know, knowing what we know now, there are so many things, so many plant foods that we can stock up on. Dry beans is one really simple example. Dry beans and grains store forever. Lots of vegetables like potatoes or sweet potatoes, cabbage, yucca. There are all kinds of foods that you can store for a long time. Plant foods that are extremely healthy. There was one final hang up. We thought, well, like, what about like fresh greens? That's something that we really got attached to. And so we recently just kind of rediscovered sprouts. Like, you can pack a bunch of grains in, like a bunch of lentils,
alfalfa,
broccoli seeds,
yeah.
And like a 1 pound bag of lentils will make like 4 meals for the both of us. It'll make us each 4 large filling salads that are like incredibly healthy greens, and we can just stuff them in our bilge, and it doesn't have to be refrigerated. And so this can be in the middle of nowhere. You know, we can basically carry a salad with us, healthy greens. And so really it's easy to have like everything we need without having to kill any animals. And so that's what every sailor should be talking about as the new self-sufficiency. There's no reason that we should have to go to some beautiful reef that we want to explore 100 miles from anywhere and see it all vibrant with life, and then feel like we have to go and kill some of that life in order to sustain ourselves. Because you know, that's not really self-sufficiency at all.
If we can do this, if we can be vegan for long amounts of time and stuff our 38-foot sailboat full of supplies for 2 or 3 months at a time, I feel like it's not an excuse for anyone on land who has access to a grocery store once a month even, because I just feel like, you know, there's so many different ways. And of course, a lot of people are addicted, or I shouldn't say addicted, a lot of people enjoy the fake meats that need to be refrigerated or frozen, or a lot of the other products, but there's so much food available that doesn't need to be refrigerated, because literally our refrigerator is, say, 3 size 12 shoe boxes. Like, that's the amount of refrigeration we have.
2.9 square feet or cubic feet.
Cubic feet. So like our refrigerator is stuffed with tempeh and tofu, and then I do a lot of the boxed, what do you call those, long long-term shelf life, the morinu or whatever, tofu that's shelf stable.
Yeah.
You know, there's just so many things. We don't do a lot of canned goods. So we do
we
try
kind of
and
laid off the
canned
canned
goods. But a lot of dried beans, pressure cooker, you know, so those go quickly. And, you know, there's just so many foods available that you can live for a long time without having to go.
Even like the seitan, you know, if you wanted to have like the faux meats,
yeah, we
you know,
make
you
wheat gluten.
like
You
made
can get
that.
a huge bag of wheat gluten that stores forever and make your own fake meat. In the Caribbean, you can get jackfruit, like the huge things, and get it fresh or
Off a tree.
off of a tree. Breadfruit. I mean, there's just
Now, didn't you say you also grew some wheatgrass? Could you do that out?
Yes.
we grew wheatgrass.
That was your idea, right? The wheatgrass.
It was.
And
so,
the kombucha too?
And kombucha.
Kombucha, yeah.
Sprouts. Yeah, we grow a lot of things, but wheatgrass was kind of fun, but we do have a cat that was competing for eating the wheatgrass, so that was a little bit weird. She had her own, but she kind of always wanted to go to ours. So, but we definitely can grow wheatgrass because you grow it without soil, so it's just on water and it's healthy for you. So
Yeah, carry it dry. I mean, you can stow it away dry, and so it isn't hard to preserve. You don't have to refrigerate it, and it's like loaded with phytonutrients and a whole bunch of other stuff that I probably knew about at one time, but I know it's really healthy for you, and it's something that is available to anyone, really. It's grass.
It is grass. It is grass. And we're kind of minimalist, not by choice, like, because we live in such a small space. Like we have to really consider everything we bring on the boat, because it has to have a place. When you're sailing, stuff can't just be flying all over the place when you're in bad weather. So everything that comes on our boat, whether it's kitchen gear or anything, we have to think about the space that it'll be stored. Like, we cook with very minimal things. We utensil, you know, we just don't have a lot of the modern conveniences, I guess you could say. Like, we don't have the hot pot because that uses a lot of electricity and we're off of solar. So like, we have to take those things into consideration. So like, I feel like there's no excuse to not be vegan. How many times can I say that? Sorry. There's no excuse.
The Instant Pot, though, you do have that.
No.
Oh, I thought you mentioned it.
Pressure cooker.
Oh, okay.
So on the propane.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We have thought about getting an Instapot. We got a bigger solar array, which is 400 watts. We had to renew our batteries again. We've gone through 2 sets of lead acid batteries, which those are, you know, recyclable, so we feel pretty clean about that. And so now we went with the lithiums, which are supposed to be recyclable also, but they're like an amazing powerhouse of energy. It's super lightweight. It looks like we could possibly even run a Instapot. But, you know, we wouldn't have to, really.
Store it.
Yeah,
so it's like it doesn't have a home. So it needs a home before it can come aboard.
But we do have the pressure cooker. Yeah, and the pressure cooker, you know, does the same thing, really. It's just manual.
It's just not.
You can just soak your beans overnight.
Yeah.
But
then you have to prepare, you know, and I'm not really great at
what else are you going to do?
You're
You're sitting in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
That's true.
There is that. I want to go stare at fish. I don't want to prepare beans, okay?
Back to San Blas. We've heard this again and again in like street conversations, like with Anonymous for the Voiceless, a activism group that we've spent a lot of time participating in. People will tell us, yeah, but you're privileged, and so you don't understand how it is for poor people. People that live in poorer parts of the world, they don't have access to food like you do. You know, certainly there are places like Inuits in frozen tundra. I don't really know how this would work for them, or people that live in actual deserts, which we've actually traveled to some dry places, and it turns out they have lots of food and water that people eat, including lots of plant food. But most of the places we went in the Caribbean, most people were very poor monetarily, but they all seemed to have really wonderful food. And so one of the most fantastic places we were at was in Panama. People would just paddle out to us in a dugout canoe that was full of all sorts of wonderful produce straight out of the jungle. and it cost pennies really, and they all ate this healthy food and shared it with us. It wasn't like it was a huge burden on anybody. It was very easy, it was intelligent, and it just made sense. There was no struggle there, and there was no reason really why someone couldn't choose to not abuse and exploit animals for their personal pleasure.
Yeah, that is one of my questions. Is it affordable for everyone to eat vegan? And I feel like you've pretty much answered that. You know, because like you said, sprouts, I mean, that's so inexpensive, and that's like one of the healthiest things you could eat. And of course, beans. You can buy those in bulk, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you can't afford dry beans, then
Something's wrong.
it's not a question of whether or not it's affordable anymore.
No, and there's a dollar store or a Dollar General or a dollar something everywhere, you know, and like, I don't know.
I don't know how many beans they got in those places, but
They
hopefully.
got lots of canned beans.
Oh, they do? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and frozen, the
Frozen fruit.
the
and veg.
dollar stores by us have frozen fruits and vegetables, which Dr. Greger, I believe I've heard him say it, and I know I've heard some other vegan doctors say it, that frozen fruits and vegetables are even healthier than regular fresh produce because it freezes all the nutrients in. And so if you can get like a dollar bag, or I guess it's $1.25 now, prices went up, you can get a $1.25 bag of frozen blueberries, which we bought stacks of them at the dollar store in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Then you know, that's like not much of a struggle really. Or frozen broccoli, or plenty of canned beans. Food is available.
Weren't you also a part of a farming family?
I say I was part of a farming family, but so I grew up in a family that was one generation removed from farming. So my grandparents, they had a really huge farm, and I believe it was like 300 acres that they were farming. I don't know that that was all their property. I think they might have leased some of it or something, and they had hired hands or other people in the family helping run that. But and I don't know specifically how many animals they had, but I think they had at least 100 animals, cows, pigs, and chickens, that they were feeding and selling. And so they grew up learning that from their parents. And it's kind of a funny thing because I had a little bit of experience with this as a child, because I would go to my grandparents who were off the farm already, but they lived by my uncle, who he farmed dairy cows and pigs alongside his neighbor. And so I got to experience a little bit of this as a child, just a glimpse of it really. When Kim and I first had thoughts about leaving our jobs and leaving the rat race, now in hindsight, especially with what's been happening in the last couple of years, 2020 and 2021, it's really made me think about this, like what the foundation of veganism is. The foundation of veganism is, of course, freedom and sovereignty for all beings, and the rights of everyone, of all beings, to express themselves freely in whatever form that might be. So I think about when we were trying to escape from the rat race, you know, it kind of feels like it was on the same path. Like I didn't really realize, or we didn't really realize at the time, that we were kind of hypocrites really to be wanting freedom and sovereignty for ourselves, and yet we were making choices that affected the freedom and sovereignty of other beings. But we were exploring this and trying to figure a way out, which, you know, this is another trigger word like veganism, but when we first left on the boat, we called it slavery. We said, you know, we left slavery behind, slavery to our jobs and slavery to our careers and slavery to our lifestyle, before we figured out that we could move on to a sailboat and live this different life, or use this as a way of escape I remember having a conversation with my grandma, she was in her 90s, and Kim and I had talked to her about, we had this idea that we were going to build a straw bale house and we were going to live off the land. I thought, well, my grandma has lots of insight on this because they did live off the land. And so I wanted to run it by her and get some ideas from her. And I always had lots of respect for her, and she was like a very strong person, and she lived a very fruitful life. And so I looked up to her, and I remember I was a little bit shattered when I ran this by her and told her what our plan was, that we were going to move out into the wilderness and we were going to grow our own food, and we were going to escape the rat race. And I remember my grandma's response was that, well, it's a lot harder than you imagine. The way she was relating was from her time when she was younger, working on this huge farm. And she explained to me like how much effort it took to feed all these animals and what was all involved to keep the farm going and just to survive and just to pay for this huge farm and this huge plot of land to grow all this feed. And then she mentioned some other things that I didn't even want to think about, like this euphemism, animal husbandry, which I had heard this word before, and I just didn't really want to think about that. Like, well, if we're going to live off the land, I thought, that means, I had seen something of this on my uncle's farm. It means we're going to have to put a glove on and reach up a cow's anus for some reason. And it was to, help cows procreate. And I just didn't want to do that. And so that kind of like dashed our hopes, really, of, yeah, maybe we hadn't thought this through and we couldn't do this. And I know it's just, this is how my grandma, was raised, and this was how she lived her life, and this was her understanding of it. Now in hindsight, I think, well, actually that was entirely possible and available to us, or to anyone, and to any human, really. It always has been, to grow your own food, and it's much simpler, of course, if we don't eat animals or don't rely on things that come out of chickens' buttholes or, the breast milk intended for the baby of another species, or, have this desire to put pieces of corpses in our body. It's really simple, to grow a small amount of food. I shouldn't say it's simple. Of course, it takes work and effort and knowledge. But this is available to everyone. Anyone can escape slavery in many different senses of the word by becoming more in touch with our natural world and the natural intelligence of our natural world too. An apple grows off a tree, and you eat that apple and you pass those seeds on, and that seed has this intelligence to feed humans or other animals. That's just the way it works, all on its own. You don't have to stick your arm up to your elbow in a cow's rear to grab her uterus, or any of these bizarre things that we have to come up with, meaningful terms like animal husbandry or any of this other craziness.
It is a little more simple to grow plants and eat those rather than grow plants, then grow animals, feed them the plants, and then eat the animals to get the nutrients the animal got from the plants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing that occurred to me, in our quest for freedom and sovereignty in this world, and saying enough with all the BS, and just like wanting to be able to live the way we want to live, and just experience this world without being some sort of slave to it, was this idea that we're some sort of frontiersmen. That's something that has been a part of my family growing up, and it's just like, it's how my father's side and my mother's side, it's how people in my family grew up in northern Wisconsin, with this idea that hunting is like some way of providing food for your family. And you know, I believed in this mythology, hunting and fishing, as a child. And you know, I know that my parents and my family, other family members, they didn't have any sort of agenda, or they weren't trying to push any sort of thinking or anything. This was just how they naturally thought, because this is how the culture in my family worked, and how most of the people around us were too. This was something we do to feed our families, is what everyone said. But you know, it always seemed like a little bit bizarre to me, and I participated in it a little bit. You know, aside from the fishing, which Kim and I were fishing maniacs. You know, I still remember as a child learning about these things from my father. You know, he was trying to teach me the ways of the world, and this is how his father taught him and how his grandfather taught him. I remember, you know, having a warm bunny rabbit on the picnic table, and my father showing me how to dissect the rabbit. You know, I remember feeling this rabbit's fur, and it felt like a kitty cat. And my father was, you know, chopping the feet off, and then he was pulling the fur back off of the body. I still remember him saying, "It's just like a sweater. I just pull it off like a sweater." And you know, he was just trying to do the best he could to convey this, you know, sort of intelligence that was impressed upon him. But it's, you know, I have to question these things now, because I don't see it as like real intelligence. That this is just something our culture teaches us. It's not real intelligence, because it wasn't a sweater. It was this rabbit's fur, and I don't think any of us really liked the rabbit when we ate it either. I'm pretty sure it was, you know, it was like just this ritual that we went through, along with bright orange vests, weaponry that cost lots of money, and all the other things, the money that we had to pay to the state in order to, you know, purchase the right to kill this animal, as if the state somehow owned this animal in the first place. And a whole line of nonsense, really, to try and uphold this mythology that we're frontiersmen and that we're feeding our families this way. I appreciate everything that my parents did for me, and I appreciate everything that my family's ever done for me to try and make life better for me. But you know, I still have to put my hands up to this one and say, you know, this is where I have to speak up and say, well, this is kind of crazy, and I hope things can change.
When you say intelligence, you know, sometimes I think about a sophisticated palate. I like using that when I'm talking to like a chef or whatever, a restaurateur, you know. I'd rather appeal to a sophisticated palate, you know, one that's aware of nutritional science and, you know, health and health span, longevity and stuff like that. Define veganism.
Veganism, to me, you know, it started out as one thing, and then it's kind of morphed, really. My understanding of it has morphed. Initially, I just thought, like, oh, vegan is like a diet, which apparently, for most people that I talk to try and talk into this thing, that's what they think. But really, it's about just respecting all other sentient being. The very basis of it, the very foundation of veganism, you know, I would like to shout out loud, because I think that we really need to be united on this, and that I think that's one thing that can unite us all: freedom and sovereignty for all beings, and just respecting the free expression of life of all beings, whether, you know, it's a cow, pig, or a chicken, or a dog, or a cat, or a fish, or any being, really, that really value their own life just for their own life, really, and they want to live their life, and they don't want to be exploited, coerced, enslaved, tagged, tracked, isolated, segregated. Did I leave anything out? Corralled.
How about you? You wanted to give it a shot?
Yeah, what he said.
What are some common questions that you get when people find out you're vegan?
Oh,
Do you
jeez.
want to go?
Where do you get your protein?
Yeah.
Who would say that?
Do people ever just find out you're vegan and start asking you questions, or do they just
Oh,
avoid
for
you?
sure.
Those are vegan.
You know, they
Shut up! Don't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
they
get
say,
them
"Don't say
started. They'll
anything."
never shut up.
Don't, just be quiet, move along.
Don't mention the V word.
I don't know if it's a question, but they say, I don't know if I could live with such a restricted diet.
I don't think I could ever do that. I like chicken too much, or I like steak too much. I mean, people are full of excuses, right? So it's always something like their taste pleasure. I'm saying I was there at one point, but taste pleasure takes over. Like taste pleasure dominates everything else. And it's just, it shouldn't be that way. Like your taste pleasure isn't worth killing an animal.
Since becoming vegan, what have you noticed different, like physically, mentally, or in any other way?
Well, for me, physically, like I've pretty much cured all of my female problems that I was going through, which ended up being, according to more research I was doing, because when you're drinking products from other mammals, they actually have mammalian hormones that affect our hormones. So it was just a matter of me getting that under control. I'd say more clarity and just feeling like energetic as we're approaching 50, closer than we want to be. Like just having more energy and just like not having as many body aches as our friends who are still consuming animal products. I feel like they're always complaining about things, and we're like, I feel like we're a little bit better off. Yeah, turmeric.
Yeah, you know,
With peppercorn.
Right, of course.
yeah, that's right. I thought this was like a good idea to do for my health when Kim made this decision to take animal products out of our diet. And we tried to just embrace a whole foods, plant-based diet. I definitely noticed huge changes. And I was like slightly skeptical, but so I was 44 at the time. And we had been traveling for 10 years, and everywhere we went to, there was plenty of activity for us. Like if we were in some tropical paradise with beautiful water, we were swimming all the time. And so we were always active. We were walking to get our groceries, or walking to do our laundry someplace, or carry water or fuel. As soon as we stopped doing that, though, when we came back into America, a lot of other things were available to us at the grocery store. There was a lot more processed food. You know, in particular, there was lots of cheese, which,
Lots of cheese.
you know, no offense, but cheese in Latin America was like not so special, really. And so coming back here, I thought the cheese was fantastic. And really, it was fantastic because it was so cheap and so addictive, and just like appealed to this addictive sort of nature that I had with cheese. I could stack up these $2 blocks, 8-ounce blocks of every different color and every different type of cheese. And we got a car also. Just before we did it, we started having new conveniences available to us, so we weren't even walking that much. And both of us started to feel kind of unhealthy, really unhealthy, actually, in hindsight. You know, I knew it was going to be much more healthy, and we watched movies like What the Health and Forks Over Knives, and a whole bunch of different video series like Mike the Vegan, and all the different vegan doctors, and probed their videos for answers to questions we had. The effects it had for me were like pretty fantastic. My entire life, up until I was 44, I got sick every year. I would always get some sort of nasty cold at least once or twice a year. And in particular, I would always get these debilitating earaches. That was something I got ever since I was a child. At least once a year, I'd get a really wicked earache that I just couldn't ditch. And I would end up going to a doctor and getting some prescription for an antibiotic or something to try and wipe it out. I'd be in intense pain with these earaches, and I really think it was probably the dairy products from everything I've read. But ever since we did this vegan whole food plant-based diet thing, I haven't gotten a single earache, and I haven't gotten a cold one time. I haven't gotten sick once. I haven't even gotten the snivels. Over a little over 5 years now. You know, that's just one huge thing to me, really, is just not getting sick or seeing somebody, coming in contact with somebody who's ill. I used to be afraid, like, oh, this person's going to get me sick, and I felt like that person was going to deliver some disease to me. And I feel like in hindsight now that it wasn't that person delivering the disease to me. I was just eating disease, really. And my body was just trying to cope in limp mode. You know, I wasn't giving my body the right things to heal itself and to take care of business. So that was just one thing. There was another big problem that I had, and that was lower back pain. When we sailed back into the country, after being in the Caribbean for 5 years, we got back into Miami Beach, and we were just in luxury land there. We were anchored in a lovely spot, and there was free Wi-Fi, and there were great coffee shops and restaurants and groceries to buy. But again, we weren't walking anywhere. We were riding cheap buses, and we weren't swimming because the water was dirty there. One day, when I was pulling up the anchor, we never had a functional windlass on our boat, so we'd have to pull up the anchor by hand. And the chain, the big chain is like about 2 pounds per foot. So multiply that by however many feet you have down, and then our anchor at the time was a 60-pound anchor. If it's 20 feet deep, you're pulling up at least 20 feet of chain off the bottom. And then when you get to that 60-pound anchor, that's really heavy too. And so when you're anchored in some of these harbors without a lot of water flow, or just like estuarial areas and stuff, a lot of times the bottom is mucky, and we call it baby poop because that's what it's like. And so the chain is just coated with baby poop, and it's smelly and slippery and nasty, and you're pulling this up with your hands, and so you have to get that off of there. And so I would just take the chain and I would like yank on it in the water, and it would pull the catenary of the chain up and rinse it in the water. And I'd do that over and over as I pulled the chain in, and we'd have to pull in like 100 or 150 feet of this chain. And then I'd get to that anchor, and I'd pull the anchor up, and the anchor, whether it was the baby poop or sometimes it was like clay, you know, which holds the boat really well, but it also sticks to the anchor really well, just thick clay. And so I would have to get that clay off the anchor before I pulled it onto the boat. And so sometimes I'd do that. I'd just like yank the anchor through the water and try and get the clay to rinse off. Well, I wasn't real careful about my stance sometimes, and when we got back to Miami, here I was doing this, pulling the anchor and chain up. I pulled kind of funny, and there went my back. My lower back, just like I had this wicked pain. And from that point on, then my legs started to get numb. And I was like, oh my God, you know, we don't have any healthcare insurance. And I like did something to my spine. Like I like damaged a disc or something. And so I just thought, well, I'm just going to have to try and get better. And this was like for a matter of years, I just was uncomfortable sleeping. I would have reoccurring back problems when I tried to lift something heavy. And I was convinced that I damaged one of my discs or something, that I heard this term, a ruptured disc, or like a ripped disc, and I visualized it in my head, and I thought, oh geez, like that, maybe that's what I did. And I wanted to believe it wasn't true. You know, I thought maybe this is my fate, is my back is just shot for the rest of my life. You know, then we switched our diet up, and I honestly can say it wasn't more than like a half a year after switching our diet up and taking all the animal products out, my back problems went away. And so it's been over 5 years, and I lift heavy things, and I don't think twice about helping people out or doing things where my back is going to come into question. And I haven't had any troubles with my back. And you know, I've heard this explained now by several of these plant-based doctors. Neil Bernard, I believe that I heard speak of it, explaining how your aorta is like a cane coming out of your heart, and traveling down your spine and distributing blood from there. And that down by the bottom of your spine, at the base of your spine, it narrows down, and that's kind of like a dead end there where all the junk piles up and it doesn't get flushed out so well, and as you know, not as many nutrients get to those areas. I know I have plenty of heart disease, you know, in my family, who they want to say it's genetic, but they all eat the same foods. They all eat lots of animal products, and you know, the science is proven. The science is clear that a plant-based diet is the only diet that can reverse heart disease, can clean your veins out. And so, you know, I didn't do a study on my back or anything. I didn't do tests, but I know I switched my diet, and all my back problems went away, along with my colds and my earaches. And I'm going to be 50 in a couple months here, so feels good.
It's interesting. Ben from Plant-Based Mafia in West Palm Beach got his story recently, and it's a great restaurant, by the way. He had back problems and he was going to have surgery. He went vegan and didn't have to have surgery. And
wow. Plant-Based Mafia.
Yeah.
On top of that, it feels right. I don't have to bear any sort of responsibility for any kind of wicked pain and suffering or slavery or just like vulgar exploitation of these animals that people just don't want to see, you know, that we've made ourselves aware of. It just like feels so much better knowing that that's out of my life. Like before I was unaware of that, and I guess I wanted to believe I was blissfully unaware, but you know, I had these earaches, these back problems, you know, and some other problems that we talked about. I don't have these things rebounding back on me because I've numbed myself to what I'm doing to my body and the golden rule, what I'm doing to others and how it's coming back on me. And it just feels good. I can have like a bowl of, you know, fruit and nuts and oats in the morning with some almond milk or my favorite, soy milk. It just feels good. It's just like, I know nobody got hurt for this. It's better for the environment. It's better for my body. So what could be better, really?
what are the most important reasons for you to be vegan now?
So for me, I think the most important reason now, like originally it was for health, and quickly thereafter it became animal rights and fighting for those who don't have a voice. And I think we've always been very active in speaking up for people's rights, human rights. We've been to gazillions of protests and always had our voice for human rights. So it just seemed natural to kind of progress into the animal rights movement. So I think for me personally, it's fighting for the animals and speaking up every opportunity that I have, whether it be conversations in the grocery store, conversations in restaurants, conversations wherever we find them.
It's like once you look at this, you definitely can't unsee it. I probably would have come to these conclusions a long time ago. Kim presented me with this idea that, hey, she's going to do this thing and cut out all the animal products, and I was faced with, oh, am I going to go along with this? And I had to ask myself these questions like, what is this about? And it all seemed very straightforward. So I think I would have made this decision a lot longer ago in my own life if someone had just presented this information to me or to us a long time ago. So I think there are a lot of people like that. Having traveled on the sailboat, we've met lots of wonderful people all over the place in different cultures. We left the rat race kind of like with a hatred for people, you know. We just like wanted to get away from people. And as soon as we met all these people out in the world that wanted to know us and, you know, wanted to know what things were like in our world, I found a new appreciation for people and traveling. I want to believe the best in people, that I think other people are just like me, and they would like to do the right thing also. And when presented with the right information, I think a lot of people are ready to make that change. We've like, you know, I'm not saying this to like brag or anything, but just in having these simple conversations, it wasn't really us that changed these people's lives either, but we've witnessed probably hundreds of people who have just like taken it upon themselves. when encountering the same information to change their own life, and they made it abundantly clear to us that they cared and that they want to change to do something that's right. Once you see this animal holocaust is what's going on, you can't erase it, really. It's an existential reality, and so you can ignore it, or you can we can try and change. So yeah, for me, same thing. Started out health, and now it's like, wow, this is something way bigger than just health.
For sure.
So are you saying the most important reason to be vegan right now is more activism, essentially?
You know, I think activism is great, and you know, I appreciate all kinds of activism. I myself prefer certain types of activism to others, but you know, anybody who's willing to do anything, whether it's just making a scene and putting the discussion at the forefront, that certainly has an effect. I prefer just to try and have conversations and connect with people. I like activism on the street, which, you know, right now we're trying to get our boat ready to go for another adventure. So we've kind of like backed off a little bit from the street activism. Anybody that's willing to get involved with street activism, like especially like Anonymous for the Voiceless, or any of these things like Earthling Experience, or like Vegan Outreach, where you're just like talking one-on-one with people and trying to explain things in a friendly way, that's fantastic. You know, and that, like, you're like changing multiple people's lives in, you know, a very short amount of time. You're just like setting them off on this journey. But in the same way, you know, just every chance I get, like when we're at the grocery store or wherever, you know, if I see an opportunity, I take that opportunity. And I think everybody who has seen this truth and understands this, I think it's like a moral responsibility, really, to speak on behalf of this truth. And you know, I think that is people's responsibility to try and wake people up to this reality.
I enjoy cooking for other people and showing them kind of what we eat, because we do get that question a lot from other sailors, you know, like, what do you eat? Or like I don't think I could ever do that, or whatever. So I enjoy creating foods for other people. So, I mean, one of the ways that we like to do, well, I'm speaking we, but I like to do, is ask people questions, because I feel like people like cling on to something more when they come up with the answer, or when they actually say it. So instead of me saying, you know, like, look at this is horrible, blah, blah, blah. When, for instance, when somebody's looking at slaughterhouse footage, I say something along the lines of like, have you ever seen this before? How does it make you feel? Instead of saying, isn't this horrible? Like, look what they're doing to these animals. Like, if the person actually says, wow, that's like really horrible, or that's really sad, you know, they're kind of coming up with it, and I think taking ownership of it a little bit more. So I think the line of questioning that we do versus just verbal diarrhea, I like to say, I think a lot of us just like spew out all these facts because we just think everybody needs to know it. But if they're not engaged in the conversation, they're not going to take it away as something meaningful if somebody's just like blabbering at them over and over again. So I think the method of having the conversation matters.
They see some wicked reality, how they treat cows, pigs, or chickens. You know, it's vulgar and it makes people react in bad ways. And so we always like try and just focus on people that are actually concerned or care. And you can tell that immediately. Somebody who comes up and wants to just like shout at you, or tell you that you're wrong, or just like has problems like being in touch with themselves or their own feelings, usually, you know, it's a waste of time to waste your energy on those people. But there are like loads of people that are like, to use the corporate term, low-hanging fruit, that they are just like us, that are, you know, they're on the cusp of changing, really, or they're people that are ready to think about their own behaviors and their own actions, and they see something that's wrong and they want to do something about it. And so they see some wicked thing happening to an animal, and so we ask them, you know, well, what do you see happening here? And then they have to explain what they see happening there, and saying it, they're reifying it in their own mind, like what's going on in front of them. And then we ask them, well, how does this make you feel? And so then they have to probe their own mind and ask themselves, well, how does this make me feel? And they have to tell you. And then we say, well, hey, as a matter of fact, this makes lots of people feel the same way. So what is it about this that makes you feel this way, you think? And it's not really hard to reach the same conclusions that, well, it makes us feel bad because we see something bad is happening to another being that can feel and can suffer. You know, then we always take them to the question of, given that so many people see this and feel bad about it, feel the same way you do, what do you think the reason is that this continues to happen? In order to answer that, you know, they have to talk about the very basis of this whole narrative that we're living in, really, which is really like, this is a narrative that goes back for thousands of years to the very root of the word capitalism, you know, which is, capita is I believe it's the Latin word for head, as in like head of cattle. And it's when men determined that they could acquire wealth by piling up heads of cattle. They could store wealth that way and sell wealth, accumulate, and be greedy, basically. And you know, so that's the world we live in, is a supply and demand world based on this principle. And so anybody can talk about that. Anybody can understand that, you know, that we just need them to arrive at this conclusion that these things continue to happen because we continue to pay for them. And the only way they'll stop happening is when we all stop paying for them. But it's not an all or nothing. It's like every little bit counts. Every one of us that stops paying for this and starts speaking about it contributes to this greater cause. We're getting there, and lots of people are happy to contribute to that, especially when they start to learn about these things, and you know, they get a simple card that has some movies and some simple resources where they can go for more information. You know, anybody can watch What the Health, Forks Over Knives, The Game Changers, you know, or if they're brave, Earthlings or Dominion, and then they can follow that to Challenge 22, or Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has another 3-week free program that gives you recipes. You know, it's just a simple measure of just like learning some new steps and discovering wonderful new foods to eat, and then they're there.
What kind of challenges have you had since becoming vegan?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I've experienced is just having the conversation with our friends who we've been friends with for a really long time, who aren't ready to have the conversation, I guess. I mean, some people I feel like will never be ready, or they're not open to it. But I guess I should say that things are changing as well, that I feel like some of those people a few years ago who wouldn't even consider having a conversation, you know, their walls went instantly up as soon as we mentioned anything, that they're kind of more curious, I guess I could say. So that would be it for me, I think.
My biggest challenge is just like walking into a grocery store and feeling like I don't want to like walk down
death row.
Yeah, walk down death row and just like start talking to everybody. Just like, put that down. Do you know what this is made out of?
One of the things we do enjoy, and I don't know that this is really goes with this question at all, but one of the things we'd like to do for activism, kind of going back to that one, is when we do walk down death row, one of us will always say, hey, hon, want any body parts tonight for dinner? Or, hey, how about some pus? Congealed pus? Would you like any of this? And people will like turn their heads and kind of look at you and like kind of question a little bit what we're talking about. Like one time, for instance, we did the pus thing, and this woman turned to whoever she was with and she's like, they just said there's pus in this. Like, do you think that's true? And I wonder if she, you know, went home and researched that, and maybe we made a difference.
It's possible, yeah. Typed it in their phone.
Yeah.
Have you seen those warning labels?
Yeah,
from
we have
PETA?
some of those.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I always wanted to come up with like a QR code that's like save 50%, scan here, you know, whatever, and it's
Yeah.
like takes you to Dominion. I'm sure somebody else has come up with that by
Somebody's
now,
doing
but
it.
that was always my
My
thing.
favorite thing to do, and you know, if any of my family and friends who are not vegan are watching this, are listening to this, you'll be like, oh, that's so horrible and wrong, but just like think it over. Because you know, I'm not like doing anything too crazy here, but at our grocery store there is a selection of special dog chew toys, and it's like really kind of disgusting. Like, I remember my dog as a kid had like these chew sticks that were like just rawhide sticks, which was just like this twizzled up hide that he would chew on. Well, at our grocery store, they have these things called crunchy tubes, and when I saw it, I just like couldn't believe my eyes. There are these tubes which are actually tracheas of some sort of animal from, you know, some sort of slaughterhouse byproduct, but it's actually a trachea of an animal that is dried up just like a rawhide stick, but it's literally the throat of an animal, and they have like a few of them tucked in a bag, and it says crunchy tubes on it, but you can see like the shape of it and everything. It's like, oh my god, you just see a trachea there. And so I can't help myself. I frequently like grab a few of these and drop them in my cart, and they're on the hangers, and then when I pass the beef jerky section, I just like stick some in, tuck them in with the beef jerky. And I don't know, I'd like to think that has an effect on some people, but I don't know if it's doing something or not, but it makes somebody think about this. Somebody has to think about
Yeah, the poor kid who
what
has
they're-
to remove them and put them back
Isn't
to
that
their
called,
original
isn't that
place.
called merchandising?
Is that what it is?
Merchandising.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah, it's product placement. That's what it is.
How has being vegan affected your relationships?
We've made a lot more friends.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
made
for
tons,
sure. Made tons of friends. And I feel like our friendships were deeper because there was more in common, like fighting for one goal. Whereas our friendships in the past, whether it be sailors or whoever, you know, we're kind of in the same place at the same time. So you become friends with someone. Whereas like the vegan clan, I feel like you can go anywhere in the world and find a vegan and you're instantly friends.
Yeah,
Like, it's kind of weird that way. Like sailors are kind of the same way, but sailors, it's changed a little bit now, but primarily when we were traveling, when we first started, we were an anomaly. Like, we were so young and most of the people were retired, so it was kind of hard to find our clan and find people that we really connected with. Whereas I feel like in the vegan community, it doesn't matter how old, how young, like everybody is fighting for one thing. And I feel like you just have that instant connection.
Yeah,
Which has
it's
been
a
nice.
super meaningful connection. And vegan sailors, if you're out there, like, send us a line, because like the vegan sailors are like gold stars. You're like
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, plug your YouTube channel real quick.
Okay, so our YouTube channel is called Sailing Tranquility Bay, and this channel is pre-vegan. We started making this quite a while back.
Trigger
And,
warning, you'll see eggs being made.
Yeah, there are some animal products in the videos. We started making these videos with the intention of sharing our stories, and we wanted to try and influence people, and our goal was to make the world a better place. We hope to bring this message out to the sailing community, because a lot of sailors are being turned on to these ideas, and you know, just like us, we've gone to lots of crazy like reefs in far out places. Lots of reefs in the Caribbean that are now like devoid of life. You know, empty reefs.
All life.
Yeah, just empty. And we've been in lots of, you know, estuaries that are polluted, or just like lots of places along the shorelines where, you know, there are these massive dead zones, which are, you know, almost entirely thanks to animal agriculture and nutrient runoff from all the feed grown for animals. So we would like to bring that back to life at some point. And that's going to happen, so stay tuned.
We have a new channel too that we're working on. It's called Changing the Tide, and it's where we're sharing our street activism and our sanctuary footage. And between the two channels, Sailing Tranquility Bay and Changing the Tide, we really want to encourage other vegans to get out there and get active, and we especially want to normalize the vegan conversation among the sailing community.
With Seaspiracy coming out now too, that like really pushed this conversation to the forefront. It's a painful area for a lot of sailors to go who want to believe in this old idea, this old narrative, and this old thinking that they embrace self-sufficiency and yet rely on other beings to support them, really on killing other animals to keep themselves alive when it's really not necessary. We saw ourselves going to some of these crazy places where we'd jump in the water with our spear guns and we'd look all around for a fish to kill, and then there were no fish to kill, and we would have to come up with some sort of crazy reason for why there were no fish there. And we were really good at saying, oh well, it's because of these people or those people who are overfishing the place, or it's the Chinese, or any number of excuses.
The Colombians, the Venezuelans, wherever we were.
But here we were, like every other day, hopping in the water with our spear guns to go and kill wildlife. And so it's kind of a crazy thing, and we definitely need to come to terms with that.
Could you be with someone who isn't vegan?
No.
No, that would be crazy.
How do you deal with other family members that are not vegan, especially like during the holidays?
One of the nice things about traveling is we don't spend holidays with people who aren't vegan because none of our family is close by. So, I mean, that doesn't really happen. But I do have an older brother who's a nurse who was not vegan and kind of not really made fun of us, but just didn't want to hear about it. And I sent him How Not to Die, and days later he became vegan. His 4 kids are transitioning. I'm not sure where they stand right now. But he read the book and he would text me like, wow, I feel like this was the fountain of youth, or I wish I could tell all my patients about this book because it's just changed his life tremendously. And that's pretty much the only family. No, your cousin.
Yeah.
So I have one family member.
Yeah, in my family, most of my family, they also were born and raised in Wisconsin, and that's just like a hunting, fishing, farming kind of place. And so these old narratives are still with us, even though, when I was a kid growing up in Wisconsin, there were little red barns all over the place. And when you would drive across Wisconsin, you'd be passing barns every mile. Hopefully maybe they're seeing that now, that like most of those barns are gone. And when you drive across Wisconsin now, you don't see the old barns. They've all crumbled, aside from a few. You have these huge CAFOs in various places, and I think people are starting to become more aware of this. They have this sense of outrage that small farmers are getting screwed. They're still a little ways away maybe from discovering that maybe they should have some outrage about what kind of like horrible, polluting, vulgar, exploiting operations these things are, just full of disease and suffering. It's a sensitive topic with most people in my family, and I've tried to have that conversation. Hopefully some of you guys are watching this video because I'm going to send it to you. But I have had a couple miracles. One in particular is my cousin Randy. Kim and I, we did this crazy thing and changed our life like this, which, we thought was crazy. But then we wanted to tell everybody about it, and we, maybe at first we weren't very good at that, but it was a sensitive area, and I was like kind of afraid to go there with family members. A couple years ago, we were hanging out with my cousin and his wife, and they joined us down in Florida here. We went out on the beach for the day, and then while we were out on the beach there was supposed to be a rocket launch, and the rocket launch didn't happen, and my cousin's wife said, oh well, it's time to go to dinner, and there's this place they wanted to go to, and it was an Italian place, and I just thought, oh no, you know, like what's this gonna be like? And so I quick said something. I said, you know, there's a great vegan restaurant in town here that we've heard about. Would you guys mind trying that out? So they were all for trying it out, and I didn't know how it would go because we hadn't been to this restaurant. And it turns out we were the only customers in there, and the vegan couple running it, they were just like fantastic, and they gave us great service, and the food was great. And so we had a good time there, and then afterwards we went to get a couple drinks. The spot where we went to get a couple drinks was right across from where we had once attended a vegan cube of truth with Anonymous for the Voiceless, doing vegan outreach. And so after I had a couple beers, I kind of went out on a limb, started telling my cousin and his wife about this experience we had there, where we have people showing the slaughterhouse footage, and anybody who stops and feels something in their heart there watching it, we like try and open them up to conversations about what they're seeing. And anyways, told them the whole spiel, how it works, and how, you know, good this makes us feel to do this thing, and how exciting it is to see people change their lives. And I ended up talking, and Kim did too. We talked for, you know, like probably a couple hours from the bar, and then into the car ride back to their condo. They were kind of quiet the whole time, and it was late, you know, we had a long day. But after we left them there and said good evening and goodbye, we were talking on the way back home, and we kind of felt like maybe we went too far with this. Like, I don't know if they were really interested in this. So we just went on our way, and then I was really surprised. Like a week later, my cousin, he just texted me, and he said, oh, well, I've been vegan for like a week now, I guess. And so he wanted some advice about some food or something. And so since then, you know, it's been like 2 years now, and my cousin, who's a year older than me, he, well, I don't know if I was supposed to put that out there, but no, he's like a really strong guy, and he happened to get really healthy. He got off some medications, was like overjoyed with the health benefits he discovered with this. He's like discovered all sorts of great recipes that he always wants to share with others. He's a retired American vet from the Air Force who served 13 tours of duty. So he's like a real American patriot. And so everyone in my family has always regarded him as a hero, which he is. So
now he's even more our hero because he's vegan.
Yeah, so he's, you know, he's like spreading the word, and he's carrying the story forward. And so that was like just like a huge boost for me. And I know he's talked to some of my other relatives, and he actually he grew up working on the dairy farm, so he was a hand on the dairy farm, and he knows all the ins and outs. And he's since shared some amazing stories of what it was like when he was a kid working on the dairy farm, and his new reflections on that. And I know he's talked to some of my other relatives. You guys are coming around, you know, you're watching this, and I hope you're thinking this stuff over, and I hope you just keep an open mind to it. And, you know, Kim and I are always here to share any sort of recipes with you. And, you know, I hope we can have that conversation and take it a little further and take our family to the next level of, you know, health.
Compassion.
Yeah, you know, greater awareness about what's going to carry, you know, everything we want into the future, for a better future for the next generation, and you know, just make this world a more peaceful place.
How do you think life might be different if you were raised vegan?
As a child, I wouldn't have been diagnosed FOS, full of blank for being constipated from eating cheese nonstop.
That never would have happened.
That never would have happened. I think my childhood would have been a lot different.
I think there were like a lot of traumatic experiences that, you know, I think people might think, well, you can't call that trauma, you know, because they want to dismiss it, because they say that's how everybody lives and that's what we're doing. That's our culture. But it is trauma, really, when, you know, a child can see that, you know, this is part of an animal and it's like part of a corpse, really, a dead body. And, you know, there's a part of us that we know, like, what's healthy and what's not healthy. Put a baby in front of a strawberry and a bunny, and everybody knows the baby's going to eat the strawberry and want to pet the bunny. And so we have to be told these stories in order to believe that this is like some sort of meaningful thing. And yeah, I know growing up I had to learn to like to eat animals. I mean, I guess that's a whole different reality, so I can't really say what that would be like, but yeah, I mean, it's
the way of the future.
Yeah, that's the way we're going.
Do you have any regrets?
No regrets, really. Just like the standard vegan cliche, like every one of us who has looked into this stuff and just thought this stuff through, we all say the same thing to everybody else, is the only regret we have is that we didn't do this sooner.
Which is true. I mean, it is.
Why didn't you do it sooner?
Didn't come in contact with the information. Kim told me she was going to eliminate all these animal products out of her diet, and she was wondering if I was going to do it too. It seems like just silly now in hindsight, but my actual question to her was like, well, what about protein? That was like as far as my thinking went on that. And we just never encountered the right people, I think, or just, you know, there was never a program on TV, there was never a program on the radio or in the newspaper that said, hey, you don't have to eat corpses and things that come out of chickens' buttholes and the breast milk intended for the baby of another species.
Well, and I think we didn't have any friends. Like, when I was in high school, my Dow and Thought teacher showed us slaughterhouse footage, and it was chickens getting their beaks cut off, and I instantly went vegetarian right then and there. But I didn't have any vegetarian friends. I didn't know anyone vegan, so it was sort of like I was just kind of on my own. My family didn't really, I'm not going to say they didn't support it, but they certainly didn't cook for me or anything. You know, it was like meat and potatoes every night, and if I didn't like it, cook something for myself or pick it out was kind of how it was in my house. So I think had I had someone who I knew was vegetarian or vegan, like I might have been more sticking to it. Would that be the way to say it? But because I wasn't around that, and then I met Mr. Frontiersman here, Mr. Hunter, and that was just sort of like difficult, I'd say, because I wasn't going to be like cooking two different things all the time, and so that kind of. So it's your fault. It's your fault I didn't go vegan sooner. I don't think there so. It is.
I don't think it's my fault. I'm pretty sure that's not true.
No, it's not your fault at all.
Prior to going vegan, did you ever think there's no way I could go vegan?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think I really ever thought about it. I mean, I just don't think I ever encountered it. I mean, maybe there was some time, but if it happened to me, if somebody said something, I just wasn't paying attention, and it was just a blip that disappeared. You know, I don't think anybody ever presented me with that possibility.
Yeah, for me, I think, like, the excuse was, like, it would be too hard to look at all the labels, or, you know, like, everything you buy, you have to pay attention to. So I think it was just a matter of stubbornness, or just like not wanting to put in the extra effort. And I was just like, oh, that would take so much time. But really, like, now we read labels on absolutely everything, not just to make sure it's vegan, but to see what's in it, right? So at some point you become more conscious of what you're putting in your body, and like what the ingredients are and what crazy things are in each of these products. So I know, well, Linda's daughter was vegan. We had a friend whose daughter was vegan, and I just remember saying to her, like, what do you cook? Like, I don't even know. Like, what do you feed her when she comes home? Because it was just like so foreign to me.
Yeah.
Because dairy was my thing, right? Cheese and yogurt. And I just couldn't imagine like not having that?
The cheese thing, you know, I have to be completely honest. Like, I was so like addicted to cheese that I thought like that was like hard to conceptualize, like how I could take cheese out of my diet. Like Dr. Neil Barnard likes to say, you know, a lot of foods are like a cheese delivery device. Like pizza, I thought of as a cheese delivery device, and it actually took me a while before I even wanted pizza again. After I deleted the cheese, I was okay not eating it and found lots of other good things to eat. But then when Kim was like, I'm gonna make some pizza without cheese, I was like, you're crazy. Like, that doesn't even make sense. But she makes fantastic pizza that is just like really, you know, just like really wonderful. It's like
all you need is pineapple, right?
Yes. In my opinion, yes. In
I'm not
opinion,
a pineapple. No, no pineapple. I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna go
what was
there.
it about relationships and being vegan?
A lot of this boils down to we need people to be more activists. You know, that way there's not this, well, I didn't hear about it, or I didn't know about it, or I didn't think about it, you know?
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I think activism can be in so many different methods as well. You know, like it could be just talking to someone and having a conversation about just like sneaking it in. It doesn't have to be, you know, full on rah, rah.
What are some of the mistakes you've made?
Being a little too aggressive in conversations. I would definitely have to say that would be my mistake. Like, what do you mean you don't understand? It hasn't gotten that bad, but it's been pretty bad.
Probably my biggest mistake is getting wrapped up in a conversation with someone who just absolutely doesn't want to hear it. Or, you know, in any sort of day-to-day conversation, you end up stuck in one of these conversations with this person who just wants to argue with you because they need to uphold their own narrative. They're going to do everything they can to justify that, and it's really just like pointless to pour any energy into that at all. If I was better at it, I would be able every time to just like be able to just laugh it off and just like come up with an exit plan instead of like getting involved at all, because every time I get involved, then that conversation just gets more and more painful and hurts people's feelings and goes to bad places, really. That's like just best avoided.
I think the plants' right activists are the best because, you know, inevitably it's like, oh, plants feel pain or whatever. And it's just so much fun to say, well, that is awesome that you care about plants so much. So do you know how many plants we have to feed to those animals? like, you know, it's just kind of, it's so dumb. Like, it's just really grabbing at straws at that point. Like, don't take my animal parts away.
Yeah, it's a psychological experiment, that's for sure, getting involved in these conversations.
Yeah. Do you take any supplements?
We still take the B12. You know, we take a cobalamin like once a week.
And iodine, because we don't do table salt.
Yeah, a couple drops.
Hemp seed is a good source of iodine.
Is it really?
Oh, we eat plenty of that. I didn't know that.
And then, of course, nori.
Yeah.
Kelp granules.
Oh, cool.
Like that. Salt isn't really, I mean, if you eat iodized salt, I mean, it's, as long as you're not eating out a lot and you know how much salt you're getting in your diet, then it's probably totally fine. I mean,
yeah, we kind of cut the salt out. So
yeah, but like Dr. Garcia, I asked him early on in a Q&A, like, well, what about salt? No SOS, you know? He's like, salt it up, man. I was like, all right, I'm so confused now.
Yeah.
yeah.
It does get confusing. Like one guy is like, no, the other guy's like, yeah.
I mean, if you're overall healthy and again, you know where you're getting it from, you don't have hypertension, and you know, whatever. I mean, use an appropriate amount. You know?
Yeah. Why be overly concerned about that?
It gets blown out of proportion because we're hearing cardiologists. There's so many vegan cardiologists, if that ought to say something. And they're treating people with extreme level of heart disease. And then we're hearing no SOS from them, and it's being overgeneralized.
Yeah, like any of these things like omega-3 fatty acids. I feel now kind of like that's like a marketing ploy for animal byproducts, really, when like half of the fish pills with fish oil on the market are like rancid fish oil. And somehow that's still not important enough to take those products off the shelf even. It's kind of ridiculous. Like there's nothing in my mind that makes any sense how humans somehow at some point became dependent on fish for fish oil. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Now, there's a lot of alpha-linoleic acid in nuts and seeds and things, but
yeah, we get plenty of that.
But some people worry about the conversion, and then if you get your omega-3 index checked, it could be a low percentage, generally speaking, if you're not getting preformed DHA. So you can get it potentially from sea vegetables, maybe.
I mean, that's something we'd like to explore in the future. Really, is seaweed. I mean, a friend of ours, an older guy on a sailboat, he actually gave us this old book. I think it's called Sailing the Farm.
I think so.
And I was really shocked and surprised to see this book from, I want to say it's like the 70s. This book tells all about picking and eating various kinds of seaweed, and goes so far as to point out, I haven't validated this, but says that you can get B12 out of seaweed, which there's this constant scare campaign about B12, and I know I've heard a revelation about it now that, oh well, you can get B12 from duckweed, and then here to find this book from the 70s that says, well, you can get it out of seaweed.
Now I think some of that might be active versus inactive or analog. Yeah, I'm not really clear on all that yet. I did ask Neil Bernard about it in an interview recently, and he wishes that it was more a part of our culture here to eat nori and whatnot. But I haven't got clarification as to whether or not that could be a viable source for B12. But I think what I have seen is that it's unpredictable how much could be in there. But there's all sorts of innovative ways we're finding to get it in plants. Yeah. See, so you got to stay away from spirulina and certain blue-green algae. Chlorella is that's a good one. How do you suggest others get started?
So I think for me, my recommendation for people is usually have a replacement. Like, you can't just say I'm going vegan and not know what you're going to prepare, how much you're going to prepare. So I feel like if you want to do it, which you should, find your replacements and have your meals prepared. And I think that makes it so much easier, instead of just like looking at your fridge and going, I can't eat half of this, because you still have it filled with animal products. Like, if you just prepare and have, your Gardein fake fish or fake chicken or whatever, then it makes things so much easier. Because I think most people fail because, number one, they're not thinking about the animals, they're thinking about themselves and their taste pleasures, and that they just don't know what to make. And so if you have a friend, or you have, there's so many resources online, whatever, figure out what you're going to make, and it will be so much smoother.
Be willing to examine how you function in this world, and just like understand that we operate off of stories. And I've heard Will Tuttle say this world that we're born into, our mind becomes colonized by the stories that people tell us, and by our culture. Really, everything isn't really set up perfect in the world, and that's why we're looking at the 6th major extinction. And that's why we have an epidemic of really unhealthy people. We have deforestation, like tearing down the Amazon. That's why the water is polluted, is because people don't just like examine these stories that we're told. And this is like the most base story there is, I think, is this idea that we eat the corpses of animals and drink or consume products made from the breast milk intended for another species, or things that come out of chickens' buttholes. It just doesn't make sense, really, if you look at it.
It's your favorite thing to say, isn't it?
It's
you gotta
true.
get it
It's
in
like,
every chance I
it hit
can.
me. Whether it's pickled, whether it's fried, whether it's scrambled, if it comes out of a chicken's butthole, it's not for you. It's like...
Period.
Period. Period. Wow.
Why do you think some people quit veganism? You kind of hit on that already. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
People quit veganism because they think about things in terms of themselves only, and they are just like unwilling to just look at the effects of their choices on others. Really, they are unwilling to appreciate that someone has to get a blade run across their throat, or be sexually violated, or all sorts of other vulgar things that we could list, in order for them to maintain this lifestyle that's not working out for us or the planet.
I think another reason is a lot of people, kind of like how I was, they just don't have a support system. And so if you're the only one trying to do it, and say you're younger and your parents buy your food still or dictate what you do, I think it's harder. But that being said, I think a lot of kids have resources like, hey, watch this video, and it's, there's help out there. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for failing.
They just need to find a community around them, and if those people aren't readily available immediately around them, all these different social media networks, there are all kinds of people to talk to in there. In like Challenge 22, that's like a great place to start. It's like nothing but people who are trying to do the same thing.
Yeah. And if you fail, don't give up. Try again. Like, there's no reason you can't try again. Like, it's not a club that you get kicked out of. Like, it's all about the animals.
That's right. Yeah, it's just keep trying, and there's no penalty for making mistakes. You just have to just learn and move on.
Yeah.
I think I made a couple of mistakes, in the first year. I just that Starbucks Frappuccino, I think it's got dairy in it. What the hell? Oh man, then what am I doing? Now it's like, oh God.
Yeah, revulsion.
Like, how dare, no way. A lot of these people who fail, it seems like they never go to a plant-based doctor. They go to a meat-based doctor. Or they don't even go. They just they go to Google and come up with a reason to fail.
Yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
We did have an interesting, we never had health care, and then all of a sudden we got it when we came back because of whatever. And we went to our family doctor the first time I wanted my blood done because we were vegan, and I just wanted to know what it was. And our doctor was not vegetarian, was not vegan. The next time we went back, she was vegetarian because our daughter was vegan. So she was like making her way there. True, so that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, everybody's learning.
Do you have any success stories you want to share? Now, you've already shared a couple, like of some relatives. You mentioned one about a cook, I think, to me off the camera.
When we moved to this marina, which is like kind of out in a backwater place in Florida, we were like a little bit nervous because it's like out of civilization, and it's like a more rural area. So we call it the Redneck Riviera. And we were concerned about how we would fit in here because it was a whole new group of neighbors. And immediately we met someone who was on the boat next to us, and she was just checking up on this person's boat. And she said, oh, when Rory comes back, you're going to love him. He's like such a cool guy. He's a chef, and he makes like great burgers and steaks. He's just an awesome guy. And we thought, okay, he's an awesome guy, but it like gave us chills, like, oh no, he's a chef, and what are we going to say to him?
Cooked body parts on the grill all the time, like 2 feet away from us.
That's true. There was a greasy grill right there, and we just thought, like, oh yeah, we're just going to be watching body parts cook, and it's going to be wafting in. And so it was a couple weeks later that Rory finally came back. So we met him, and he was like a really nice guy. But still, he was a chef at this river restaurant, and we thought, like, how are we going to connect with this guy? And every time we chatted with him, he would tell us, oh, you have to come by the restaurant because we have burger night, and you have to try one of my burgers. And so we listened to this for a while, and then finally one day he said this about the burgers, and I just let him know we don't eat burgers. And I was kind of flat about it, and he said, oh, are you vegetarian then? And I said, well, actually, no, we don't eat any animal products. We're vegan. And I wasn't very jovial or anything, and wasn't really spirited in my response. And and not so patient either, because I really had low expectations. But I was really surprised when he responded that, oh, he's like been wondering about that a lot, like the effects it has on the environment. And he likes camping and stuff, and so he had thought about this before, and he had tried being vegetarian before. I think it was like a week later, he all of a sudden popped up and told us, oh, he thinks he's been vegan for like a week now, and he was trying to work out some of the details. He's still a cook, and so he has to, you know, deal with cooking dead animals and stuff, and he has to taste things to make sure it's right for the customers. But he's always talking about it, and he's as vegan as he can be outside of his job. For all practical purposes, he's concerned about being a vegan whenever we talk to him.
Like 2 years later now, he had messaged me and asked me for a recipe. He's changed locations, restaurants, and it's a sandwich shop, and he wanted a vegan sandwich. And I had just watched Jane and Ann Esselstyn's video on some sandwich that they take to all their block parties. And so I just forwarded it to him, and I was like, this one looks really good. You should add this to the menu. And so he did, and we went in and bought it, and it was a delicious sandwich. And now that was about a week ago, and he just sent me a text saying that the veggie sandwich actually sold better than any other sandwich at the sandwich shop for the week, and they sold out of them, which was just like so surprising to me. I actually said, are you pulling my leg? Like, are you for real? And he was. He said absolutely everyone who got it loved it, and it was just really encouraging that, number one, there's a vegan option at any place around here, because no one has anything even close to vegetarian, to be honest. It's just sort of everything is meat and fish and dairy and everything. So it was really exciting. And even though he's not like 100% vegan, he talks to everyone about it. And I think he does more activism than a lot of vegans, because he talks to so many people, you know, like in the restaurant industry. And
yeah,
so it's kind of, he's always talking about it.
So there are some like angry vegans who, you know, they learn this truth, and they have a real hard edge about it, and they can't understand why people aren't changing, and maybe they're not so patient about things. And I think a lot of those type of people might judge him that, oh, well, he hasn't like quit working, but he's a chef, you know, and there's no place else for him to work. And so he kind of has to do this. And
so he's plant-based, but we forgive.
So, but yeah, like Kim said, this guy made this sandwich, and it's now like the only vegan option in town. And this isn't just
probably
like
within like a 30-mile radius.
This isn't just like a deep fried, you know, faux meat kind of option. This is like a wonderful plant-based Dr. Esselstyn sandwich that sold out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like a huge win.
Another success story is our neighbor who's 72. He just pulled in here maybe 6 months ago. And of course we just start talking to him, and he has all these aches and pains and yada, yada, yada. So we just say, well, you know, maybe you want to change your diet. And he's the guy who gave us the book, Sailing the Farm. Yes. So he like knew all of this information. He just wasn't practicing it. So after many videos shared and lots of information shared and food shared, he has cut out meat and dairy 4 months now. And he said he's feeling much better. And you know, he's 72 and sails by himself, and he's doing pretty amazing. And every day he comes out, like the other day we went to Trader Joe's, and I brought him back a can of jackfruit to try, and I bought him some tofurkey sausages to try and some chorizo. So I'm always like trying to just like give him more to explore. He likes to cook, so that's always a plus. And it's just kind of fun to, you know, we were never forceful. We were just kind of sharing our story and our successes. And, you know, okay, maybe we were a little forceful, but if I'm honest, but it works. So he's on his way. It started with the milk. Scott told him about the pus in milk.
Yeah.
That freaked him out, and he found banana milk and loved it. And from the banana milk, it's just kept going.
I think he watched Dairy is Scary, if I remember right.
I think so.
But yeah, again, I like didn't have high expectations, and I kind of felt like someone from the older generation, and so this is like new information. And I was like really shocked and surprised when he found this old book he had that he wanted to loan us. He had been vegetarian before, and so he had explored this stuff a long time ago and lived it. And so here he whipped out this book that was like everything that we want to be and do right now, which is like show people that it's possible to go anywhere and live anywhere inexpensively or affordably, and in harmony with nature, eating plants, eating seaweed, it turns out.
Yeah.
You got a favorite quote you want to share?
Animals' lives are their right. I have no idea.
I don't know the quote specifically, but Dr. Kim Williams,
Oh, yes.
who he used to be the head
That's a
of,
good quote.
what is it called? The
Cardiology.
American College of Cardiology. What's the quote?
He said, if you're not a vegan cardiologist, you haven't seen the information
You
yet.
haven't seen the
along those
information.
Read
lines.
the literature.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
That's what Bernard says that too. Is there anything about vegans you wish you can change? I think you kind of already covered that earlier.
Every vegan, wherever you're at in this journey, because I don't think it's just like an on-off thing. I don't think you just become vegan and it's the end of it. I think there's a lot of other things that maybe, even if you're vegan, you're still unaware of when it comes to narratives that we live in. Like you discovered a big one, but there are other narratives that affect our lives. I'm not perfect, Kim's not perfect, nobody's perfect, but I think we'd all be better off, all us vegans, if we just like learn to be more tolerant of others, vegan or not, and just like understand that everybody has something to offer, even if they're not vegan. You might learn a lot from somebody who hasn't thought about being vegan or what that's even about. They might be able to tell you some amazing things.
Yeah, so it's kind of reminding me of Will Tuttle. He says there's different phases of veganism. And then I met this one lady, spent the night with her and her husband. I was doing one of these, like I'm doing with you. And then when I was leaving, she was like, the next thing you could do to kind of take things to another level is not use toilet paper. It's kind of interesting.
Wow.
I'm not there yet.
So you could always take it further, what I mean?
There's always that. Like, we have a lot of vegan friends that are zero waste, and that just amazes me. Because, like, on a boat, it's so hard because we just don't have a laundry on the boat. So, if you're zero waste, like, you're not, like, I do laundry once a month, we'd have to have a lot since and...
There's like Ziploc baggies are, we use lots of Ziploc baggies,
plastic.
but our refrigerator's like this big. So we try to reuse Ziploc baggies. But we've lived off-grid for 17 years for the most part, too. We've washed our laundry in a bucket with
water and ammonia.
Ammonia.
130 gallons of water lasts us a month.
2-gallon showers for a decade.
Yeah.
No car for a decade.
We're making excuses for our single-use plastic.
So we're sorry about the Ziplocs. We're trying.
And we're not going to no toilet paper, sorry.
We're sticking with toilet paper. I don't know where to start with that. I'm not sure I'm ready for that information.
Do you think we'll ever see a vegan world, and how can we get there?
I think we will. I guess it depends on how we define a vegan world. Not everybody's going to accept these ideas, and a lot of people are going to drag their feet on this, but it's just obvious to anybody, whether you're vegan or not. When you look around, like every grocery store, even like the dollar stores, have lots of vegan products. With social media, there's like this huge outreach happening, and I know just like in the 4.5 years that we worked on Anonymous for the Voiceless, going to over 100 cubes of truth. When we started, we were like, we didn't know what we were getting into, really. We found a couple TVs that people were casting out of boats, some flat screen TVs, and we were doing some work on somebody's boat, and they were changing their batteries, and we had a battery that was in semi-decent condition, and then we bought an inverter, and we saw that there was one of these Anonymous for the Voiceless Cube of Truth demonstrations happening in Jacksonville, We found it on Facebook and then on the internet. And so we were determined then, after seeing like Joey Carbstrong and Earthling Ed do this activism, we thought, yeah, we want to try this. So we actually put 2 TVs together, and we put some footage together, and we showed up at this thing. The woman who was running it, she was like, "Oh, you guys are all in." And we were so nervous. We were like, we thought people were going to throw rocks at us. So our response was really sheepish. We were like, yeah. But in the time that we've done this, like from the start till the present, the response has been like night and day, really. When we started doing this, you know, there was like lots of friction, and outreach got better, certainly. But the conversation in the beginning was definitely challenging with a lot of people, whereas these days it's like it seems like everyone that encounters this experience that comes to talk tells us yeah, their brother or sister or boyfriend or husband or wife or grandma, or you know,
everybody knows somebody.
Their best friend is doing this, and oh yeah, they have some sort of insight on it. You know, they're looking for more information, and it's like you can feel like a landslide change taking place. You know, there's a huge change of tide happening. Change is here. It's like, I think we've reached critical mass, really. Now it's just like going faster and faster.
Yeah, I think the younger generation too is changing a lot of things. You know, they're more concerned about their future than the older generation. So I think as the older generation leaves the world, the younger generation are changing dramatically, and hence like all of the selections in the grocery store. You know, like it wouldn't be there if people weren't buying it. So the more voting with our dollars at the grocery store, the more things will change. So I think things are changing, not as quickly as I'd like to see them, and I'm not sure it would happen in our lifetime, but I think eventually it will.
So there's this thing called Vegan World 2026 that Dr. Salesh Rao started.
Yeah, I've got the T-shirt.
No way.
Yes, way.
So yeah, and I used to think, what the heck is he talking about? You know, like Vegan World 20. There's no way, you know. And then I came to understand it with Thomas here recently. Actually, he did say this. It's just normalizing what veganism is around the world. It's not that everybody's vegan. It's just normalizing it. And I think that's pretty cool, you know.
That's interesting.
Good stuff.
That is cool. And I think a lot of people, I mean, most of the world is predominantly vegan anyways. Meat is such a delicacy in so many places. Like, people can't afford it. And so, you know, it's so subsidized here that it's just super cheap. And that's what everybody goes to. But if meat were actually cost what it should without the subsidies, people wouldn't be eating it all the time. Like, animal products would be, you know, for the rich and not everyday Joe Schmo.
Yeah.
So.
And it's weird because if you look at the land usage charts, according to FOA and whatnot, it seemed like it was like 80+% of what the world is eating comes from plants. Now, unfortunately, a lot of what we eat that has a lot of plants in it is tainted with milk or whatever.
Yeah.
But most of what people are eating is plants. But only a small percentage, like less than 20%, is just plants. So if we can get whole plant food to expand and get rid of all this processed crap and the animal stuff, this world would be so healthy. I like what you said about, you know, the youth going for this more, you know, than anybody. So I want to say more vegan babies.
Not from us, though.
That ship has sailed.
You could adopt one.
We could. I always said foster, adopt, maybe. Nah.
They can pull the anchor up.
Maybe in another 5 years.
What do you think a vegan world would look like?
You know, it's clear now that if we got rid of all the feed crops to feed animal agriculture and just like lived off the plants themselves, we could rewild a lot of the countryside. We could stop chopping down the Amazon. We could have these dead zones disappear, like the massive dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico that just occurs over and over. And just about everywhere we've gone on the East Coast of America, we see these dead zones pop up you know, we spent 2 days we went up to Washington, D.C. on the Potomac, and then a month later we came down the Potomac in the middle of summertime. And it was just like horrifying. You know, it took us a whole day to motor up there and a whole day to motor back when we headed back. We sat up there because it was so hot, really, that we ended up just going to all the free museums, the Smithsonian over and over, and
for the air conditioning,
all the different Smithsonian museums. And then finally we just said, okay, we just have to get out of here. We spent a month going to Smithsonian museums, and so we headed back out there, and it was like, you know, it was a really hot time in the summer. And there were advisories. That was a crazy thing. There were advisories to stay inside because the air was polluted there. And there were advisories posted on the waterfront not to eat any of the fish if you fish there, because the fish were full of poisons. On our trip out of the river, the entire surface of the river for like miles was just covered with like green algae and dead fish everywhere. Just like mile after mile, there were dead fish floating on the surface of the water. And you know, we've seen this like all over the place. So a vegan world we could just like stop doing that, really.
Have clean water.
A vegan world would look like when COVID hit.
Yeah.
Because you know how like all the air got clear and animals started coming out. People, because everybody's in a quarantine, it was like humans all of a sudden died off and everything just came back to life.
Yeah. It's like Chernobyl now with all the animals coming in.
Yeah, it certainly had a huge effect, right? I mean...
and how ironic is that dysfunctional relationship we have with animals causing a zoonotic disease that cleans everything?
That's been a whole divisive thing too, dividing a lot of people. But one thing that it seems like everybody could agree on with this COVID thing for the past 2 years has been that a lot of people are certainly thinking about, a lot more people are thinking about their health. And taking personal responsibility for their health. And we definitely have to embrace that. That is the way to the future, no matter what side you're on of any of this, whose politics you agree with, or you know, where you stand with our civil rights and constitutional rights. For all of us, this whole drama scene has made us consider what makes us healthy, and you know, whose responsibility is it for us to stay healthy? And you know, thank God people are starting to think about that and put personal responsibility for their health on a higher, more serious level.
What foods do you eat?
So we try to be whole food, plant-based, no oil, no salt. No fun, some people would say.
No, that's not true. Right?
No.
You're not selling it, really.
I know.
I was like, what foods do you eat? And he looks at you.
Yeah, well, I cook.
Whatever she cooks.
What food do you eat?
I
Yeah, I cook, he eats. No, we do mostly whole food, plant-based. So we eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of tofu, a lot of tempeh, occasionally some of the faux sausage. Occasionally I'll make something with wheat gluten. I made a ham that was a little bit too real. It kind of freaked me out.
Yeah, that's weird.
Like, oh, that one wasn't very good.
You're like, what have I done?
Yeah, it was just like, it was creepy.
What's that behind you?
The possibilities are endless.
There it is.
We eat onions. No. No, we eat the rainbow.
Yeah, eat the rainbow.
We had a good dinner. What was that?
So rice. I call it cheesy rice because I put nooch in it and
Lots of
cilantro,
nooch.
and then, you know, veggies, cauliflower, broccoli, mushrooms, onions, peppers, field roast, apple sage sausage, sweet potatoes,
Red onions.
Yeah.
Cilantro.
Yeah. I'm not a big recipe follower, so it's always kind of an adventure what comes out of my cooking, but
Yeah, Kim always like asks me like what I want for dinner, and then there's like some sort of struggle, and I'm not as creative in the kitchen as she is, so I try and contribute something. I'll just like say pizza.
That's always the response. Like, I need help.
Or whatever.
You're
But
not helping.
she just, it's like, seems so simple for her, and I could probably do better in the kitchen. But she just like takes a bunch of vegetables and like chops them up and throws them in there and dumps some spice in there. It's always fantastic. It always leaves us totally satiated. It's always super healthy. You know, it's always fantastic.
Thank you.
You know, I can't help but think of some wise words I heard. You know, taking all these super fatty animal foods out of our diet. You know, just essentially taking all the excess fat and sugar out of our diet. Like really, it just made me appreciate the subtle flavors of fruits and vegetables so much more. And it was like, you know, it's Dr. McDougall. He was also talking about this. I mean, everybody's talking about this because it's good information.
All the cool kids are talking about it.
You know, you take out all these fatty, sugary, super salty, processed foods, especially. Take this stuff out of your diet for a while, and then it just brings those thresholds down to where, oh wow, I can taste food again, and it tastes good. You know, all these fruits and vegetables are spectacular, and so we have a real appreciation for that. So, you know, it used to just be like, oh, we got some crackers, and there's a block of cheese, and I can chop an onion, and that was like
and some summer
a meal.
Sausage. Don't forget
Yeah,
that
or
tube
sausage.
of who knows what.
Wow. Don't look into how they make the sausage, or do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's all really good. Geez,
My tiny little kitchen,
1,000.
and if I can do it in my tiny little kitchen, anybody can be vegan.
These sweet potato wraps that you make out of sweet potatoes.
Sweet potato roadies?
Wow.
Have you
Sweet
ever
potato roadies.
like
fantastic.
It's just sweet potato and flour, and it's like a tortilla. They're so good.
Yeah, it's like a
good.
really super soft orange bread that we eat like a wrap. It's super healthy and super yummy.
So what about breakfast?
There's kind of two that we do. Tofu scrambles. Or like our primary breakfast is
The Buddha bowl. It's like that's the go-to, you know.
it's just raw oats with whatever berries or bananas that we have, hemp seeds, turmeric, pepper, pecans usually, pecans, cranberries, dried cranberries.
Yeah, that was
else?
that was kind of like
Or
a
whatever, with
you know, in the beginning that was like a Esselstyn go-to, like along with the greens for scrubbing your veins out. Oats, it just turns out they like scrub out excess cholesterol, which, you know, when you're eating animal products, you're putting all this excess cholesterol in your body, and oats are little scrubbers to like remove that. And I think that's why we got into the oats maybe. And I don't know if I don't think I need to scrub any cholesterol out of my body, but yeah, we really like the rolled oats because it doesn't take a whole lot of effort really. You don't have to cook them or anything. You can just dump a cup of them in the bowl, and then just whatever fruit you have on hand, or dried fruit, you chop up a bunch of bananas or mangoes, blueberries, dried cranberries, what else? Hemp seeds, and we always put a little bit of turmeric in there with pepper, and then I like the soy milk with it, and it's just like simple and easy.
And oats store forever, and there's like 50 pounds of them behind me in the cabinet. So yeah. We eat a lot of tofu. Like we really I like making, like, I call it tofu salad, but it's basically like egg salad. Would you say, with tofu? Maybe. Like,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
not. Pickles and celery and onions and
Jalapenos.
and a little bit of mayo and mustard, and just kind of like a cold salad-y kind of thing on a wrap. We eat that a lot.
Yeah, a ton of it. I'm still waiting for my breast to sprout.
Oh yeah, soy boy.
But
Gyno, there's a word for it.
Boys-
I can't remember.
Boy boobies?
I don't know. Man boobs.
Gynomastia or
The
something.
man boobs, they haven't happened.
When somebody says, oh, that causes man boobs, I say to people, well, next time you see a guy with man boobs, ask him how much soy he eats.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Or I like to tell people, they're like, oh, I can never eat soy. Do you know how much animals eat soy, you know, to be fattened up? Like, you're eating soy. Like, get over it. Like, get over it.
Yeah, most of that's going to animals. Yeah.
Yeah, more propaganda.
You made some really cool chocolate ball thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Desserts. You were good at desserts.
Date bowls, I guess you could call them. They're actually the Game Changers raw cookies that I make into, I add a little bit extra, make them into balls and cover them with hemp seeds. I like making peanut butter mousse with like chocolate ganache, I guess you would call it.
Yeah,
I bake a lot, especially when it's cold. I love to bake.
Like the tofu with, here we go again with the tofu. Tofu with like some lime zest and lime.
Oh, yeah, like a mousse.
And
That's
it's like a
Esselstyn recipe.
lime mousse out of tofu. It's like if you gave this to any meat eater, you know, carnist, they wouldn't have any idea that this is tofu. It's you know, some wonderful stuff.
Yeah, and you do your sprouts.
Yeah, we do sprouts. The only thing we're growing, we did tomatoes this year, but that was an experiment, kind of. Like,
yeah.
we won't be doing that again.
Well, yeah, a friend of ours gave us a few tomato seedlings and said they were heirloom tomatoes, and we said, yeah, we're going to grow tomatoes on the boat. It's really hard to have a garden on a boat, but we had the cockpit was just full of these huge tomato plants, and we probably got 50 tomatoes off of there.
We did pretty good.
We took them down when we got a couple cold snaps. So they didn't get really large, but they were a good size.
Yeah,
and lots of them were green. And we made an amazing discovery. If you put all those green tomatoes in a brown paper bag and toss an apple in there, and the whole bunch of them, every single one of them, turned red. And they were fantastic.
Yeah, they were delicious. Organic tomatoes.
You think you'll ever eat lab-grown meat?
No.
No, that's
no
disgusting.
interest whatsoever.
Yeah.
What would you do if a doctor told you you had to eat animals?
I'd tell him that he needs to do some research.
Yeah, I would try and have that discussion with him, that he needs to study nutrition a little bit more.
How much of your diet is raw?
Probably very
10%,
yeah,
5%,
small.
very
I mean,
small.
I know. I guess we eat lots of
breakfast is
the
raw.
breakfast is all raw.
It's funny, whenever I ask that, a lot of people are like, oh, hardly any. And then the more I probe, it's like, it gets a little more and more and more. Oh, okay, actually.
We're trying to kind of go that way with the raw fruits and vegetables, just because it's so much healthier, you know. I kind of feel like, oh, geez, we're cooking the nutrients out of our food when we cook the broccoli too long or something.
Yeah.
Because it makes a lot of sense to go raw, I think, and so that's kind of the next step for us, I think.
So
then you'll do all the cooking, right? If we go raw.
Yeah, I'll do all the cooking. You might have to do some chopping, but I'll do the cooking.
That's the deal.
So what, about 30% maybe?
Yeah, probably. Now that I think about it, like breakfast every morning is pretty much raw. So
yeah, that's an easy.
Try to have a salad.
We eat a lot of salads.
Yeah, we eat a lot of salads too. So we could be
salads.
close to 50% already, I guess.
What do you think about people going on these meat-based diets, like paleo, keto, carnivore?
We've actually met a lot of people who have become vegan after that because their bodies got so messed up, and they had to fix what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. I can't understand it. Like, if you do any research at all, just like how bad that is for you, or how little it makes sense. I mean, to call it some sort of caveman diet too, as if like cavemen were out there with their stone arrowheads killing animals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. It
Makes no sense.
It's kind of crazy.
Anything else?
Yeah, everybody should do this. It's like really simple. You know, just like talk to your friends who are experimenting with this or who are in it, and figure it out. You know, it's good for you. It's good for your health. It's good for the planet, and of course, it's great for the animals. You know, we don't need to be continuing this animal holocaust anymore. There's a much better way. So, just get on board.
Be kind to every kind.
That's right. Be kind to every kind.
Could have been your quote.
There it is. Be kind to every kind.
Hey, and then how can people find you if they want to? I know you mentioned your YouTube channel earlier.
Oh, we have a webpage,
So,
sailingtranquilitybay.com.
sailingtranquilitybay.com, or I'm Scott Bourgeois on Facebook.
Spell that.
Geez, that's a difficult one. It's Bourgeois. And it's kind of a crazy name, you know, but we like to put it out there because we're the bourgeoisie refugees. We left that behind, and this is a whole new thing we're working on.